What's up, bud? Just making sure the hair is good, yeah?
Yeah, I have my a super zoomed in lens, so you just get a little neck shot on me.
Fair. This is the first time I'm properly using this camera as well, so I hope I'm in focus as well.
Oh, so you got a DSLR plugged in too?
It's a mirrorless Canon camera.
Hell yeah. Yeah, you look good. I mean, I didn't know if anyone else in the lifting world would be able to figure out technology well enough so that they could use a camera for their podcast. It's usually too advanced for the like average
For the
average
meathead
per
people, yeah?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Man, it took me like I think it's really interesting. I'm definitely going very far down that rabbit hole now.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
yeah. I'm like I got a lens for it and everything. Obviously, it's better if you get a lens and stuff. And then
Yeah.
I started recording my lifting, just my training there a few days ago with it. I need a new lens and everything. Like,
I have a funny story. I don't know if I'll tell it for the podcast, but by the way, do you want me to record this on Audition?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because my audio will sound better probably for the podcast.
Yeah, man. Thank you. That's awesome.
Call it. What is this? What's this podcast called?
One more before closing.
Miss You. What's that song? It's like what's that song? It's like one last call for alcohol. I don't know the tune right now in my head.
Honestly, I don't know what song that is, but that's actually kind of where the name came from. I was thinking of ideas and like going to a pub and everything is really like a big part of the culture here in Ireland. And I was trying to think of like what kind of vibe I wanted for the podcast, and it was like just a friendly chat over a few pints, and then
Closing time.
yeah, it's
One
like
last
getting
call
one in.
for alcohol. So it's
So
called Closing Time. Found it. It's
whatever.
really sweet though. Irish culture is different than in the States. In a good way. My sister lives in Ireland right now.
Oh yeah, you were here a while ago before the pandemic, right? I saw on your social
Yeah.
media.
It was one of the last places I went to before traveling. Before moving to Minnesota. I mean, it's one of the last places I traveled to before becoming stationary.
Yeah. And what did you think of it?
Well, when I first went there, I didn't love it mostly because I was coming from like, I don't know, I think at some point I was coming from like Croatia and like these warm, beautiful places that I could go outside and just, tan or whatever. And
Yeah.
it was very rainy and like expensive, also expensive. I hated how expensive Dublin is.
Yeah.
And I still do.
I live
It's
here, bro. What you
incredibly
think?
inconvenient. It's like, oh yeah, you want to get some shit sandwich from like what do they have? I don't know if it was Sainsbury or I don't know something.
Little or
Tesco,
Tesco, probably. Yeah.
Tesco, yeah. It's like like $7, not even $7, €7 for like a shit sandwich.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I had a job there and I was paid accordingly to like the prices of things,
Mm.
it would be fine. One thing I added, like okay, so I figured out if I want to go there, my sister lives there. I gotta like find a way to enjoy it. So, oh, the other thing is you don't have any fucking gyms over there.
No, we don't. I used to have to travel over an hour just to get to a gym. I live like very close to the like border between counties, so like I'm
Uh-huh.
closer to the Wicklow Mountains than Dublin city centre, and most of the gyms are in Dublin city centre. So I always had to travel like an hour and a half just to get to a gym, and it was such a pain in the hole. But yeah, we do have really nice like hike trails and stuff. We've got very
That's
nice. Yeah.
that's what I was like. Once I decided, okay, just eat cheap, just buy, bulk ingredients. Try not to like get meals. Also, forget lifting because that was helpful. Once I said whatever about lifting, I was like, okay, I like this place a little bit more because I didn't want to go to. I don't know if you have you started recording this thing.
I have already, yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to go to Abs Pro. It was a bit far for me. It was like I think 40 minutes away.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to like, hey, I'm visiting my sister. I'll go travel north. I don't even know where it was, by bus with, so that's expensive to get there, then to pay and organize it. I just couldn't be bothered. So then I said, all right, like, screw it. I'll go lift when I get back to the States. So we went on all these train rides and did a lot more exploring of where did we go? We went to a bunch of different places with awesome hikes, like really beautiful place. If you can, like, I think if you stay in the city, it's probably not that fun, but maybe, I don't know. Like for me, it's all about adventure. Like even here in Minnesota, it's like there's so much to explore if you make it a habit to explore. But if you make it a habit to just mess around and the city for a long time, it's gonna get boring. It's like we have this Minnesota is bigger than Ireland, I think, landmass wise. I actually don't know if that's true, but it's pretty big, and it doesn't have an ocean, but it's got 10,000 lakes. And if you drive far enough, which is also nice, you can drive wherever you need to, it becomes a much cooler state than if you're just like, oh, I have to get out of here to get, adventurous. It's like, not really. You just got to drive a few hours. You're good to go. So I've been trying to implement that more in my day or my life, I guess.
Yeah. I'm actually really lucky where I live. If hiking and getting out into nature is like something that you really enjoy, which I have found over the past year or so of lockdown, because I live like 10-minute drive away from as many hiking trails as you could possibly want. Like at my bedroom window, you can just like over the houses, because I live in a housing estate, but over the houses you can just see mountains everywhere, so it's pretty sweet. And I've really enjoyed that over the past year lockdown. It's something I never really did before, but having nothing else to do over the past year, because everything literally having nothing else to do, I've found that, and I'll definitely be keeping that up over the years.
I've really liked that. That's one of the things that not everyone gets to have like a positive experience in the pandemic. Luckily, I think both of us have like the option to go and make traveling a little bit more part of their lifestyle. And like, I mean, man, I was depressed for the majority of last year. I'm such a social person. I mean, I'm really social, but simultaneously, I'm so cool with doing nothing. You know what I mean?
I get you 100%. I'm the same.
It's like, oh man, oh no, I have to play video games for like 2 years. That's how I'm gonna socialize. Oh damn.
Oh no, yeah. I don't have to leave the house. No.
Oh damn it. So it's kind of funny because I mean, part of my traveling was very fun. I mean, when I was with RTS, we did all these seminars with Isabella, and I really loved that. Like I had some intent behind traveling at that point, because before I was traveling and it was fun. I was just trying to see places, see what it's like to live in other cities. And now without like exploration was something that I really loved and gave a lot more connection to the world, I guess. Growing up in the States, you learned nothing about other countries. Like it's like you're pretty much taught that America has everything that you need, and everyone else is like sad and upset that they don't live in America. Like that's straight up like what you learn in school. And it's like, man, that couldn't be further from the truth, at least from my experience. It was like, okay, America's got a little more quote unquote freedom. Like you can drive around the country, and it's a massive place, so you can do that, and there's way more stuff. Like the two biggest benefits I know about in the States are that you can have whatever you want if you have money for it, and you can drive wherever you want if you have a car, which is nice. I mean, Amazon Prime right now is the reason that I think my dopamine like is fueled by Amazon Prime. I was nervous this morning because I have this video shoot that I'm doing next Monday, something unrelated to powerlifting, and I'm worried about my battery life on my cameras, so it's kind of nervous. I'm like, oh, you know what? Just go on Amazon. How much is a battery? And also when it will get to you, because it's like on Monday. And so I googled like the Sony batteries on Amazon, and I just press buy now. It's coming on Friday.
Sick.
It's like that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
But when you can travel, there's so much more fulfillment to like your life, I think, when you
absolutely
break down.
In Ireland, like it's kind of like a double-edged sword. There's a big drinking culture, and there is a certain group of people who literally like their idea of the best time is just going to a pub or going to get hammered. But then there's the other side of people who don't really like doing all of that, and that would be me. I'm not one to go get drunk all the time. I don't like drinking really. I would definitely enjoy like training. Like a lot of the time my social kind of interactions would be through people I go to train with, or people I know through training. We go for a walk or something. But if you are one of those people who isn't really like into exercise or anything, there's not much else to do in Ireland. So you really have to go abroad to find find out what other cultures are out there, see what else there is to do, because there's not much else to do in Ireland. You don't go on holidays in Ireland. You go to holidays in Spain or France or Greece or somewhere, and if you're lucky, you get to go to America once or twice.
It is definitely one of those things though with what your social circle is doing, because I was always trying to figure out, like, I've never had a big social circle. I mean, I've probably at a maximum, I think my peak of like social circle, like how many people were like reaching out to me to hang out, was when I was traveling and I was in all these countries to talk about lifting, so I'd be in a country and everyone that was there knew I was there, was like, hey, do you want to come go get coffee? Do you want to go to this bar? You want to do this or that? Otherwise, I'm pretty like, I got two people I'm okay to hang out with, especially right now, because everyone's opinions are so polarized that it's like, I don't want to hang out with someone that's like an anti-vaxxer or an anti-mask person. Like, I'm not, it's too upsetting to be around. So it's really nice to me for me that I don't have a massive social circle, because a lot of people's opinions about how they do day-to-day activities are influenced by that. And so, like, you talked about drinking. I haven't drank. I think I had one beer to like celebrate the start of my new company, and I had like heartburn for like the entire day. I didn't even finish it. I had like half a beer, and then I had like heartburn for like 6 hours. I was like, okay, what is this good for?
Fuck this shit. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I used to, like, as a teenager growing up in Ireland, whether you like to or not, you just drink. Like, some people legit start drinking at like 13 years of age. I probably had my first drink around 15 or 16, and from there on until you're like 18, 19, and you're out of school and you find a different group of friends, all you do is drink. And I had such a high tolerance, but now I would have one beer and I'm loopy. And I'm like, I'm not a small person. Like, I'm 6 foot, I'm nearly 120 kilos, and one beer absolutely ruins me. It's really sad because I'm only 22. So like, I don't know what I'm going to be like at 30. I'm probably not going to be able to drink at all.
Dude, it's actually good though. Like, imagine, like, the thing is, this is what I think about beer and alcohol. If you have enough negative consequences from drinking, it's really easy to stop, I think. I mean, unless you're like addicted to it. But like, one, there's all these attachments to it. You got lifting. So you got lifting. How does alcohol impact your lifting? For me, I'm not saying I'm like super weak the next day, but my motivation level, I usually want to sleep all day. If I've hung over or even just have a little bit of alcohol, it impacts my sleep so much, to the point where my nutritional habits decrease, my training desire, motivation decreases, at least for the next day. And I'm kind of a lazy person in that sense. Like, if I feel like sleeping, I'm going to sleep. Like, I don't like to ignore my natural inclinations too much, especially when I know the impact on top of the lack of sleep is chronic injury and pain. Like, I've been, working around hip pain for the last 5 years, and sometimes it's like, for the most part, it's gone. Like, I don't feel it. But when things like sleep come into play, and I don't get a lot of it, for example, then sensitivity increases a lot. So it's like drinking then increases pain. I hate being in pain. Also, socially, I've never had anything good come from it. Like, you think it's good, and then you like realize what you've said or done, and you're like, that wasn't as sensitive as I should have been to my friends, or like, was I being weird? Like, I don't like not knowing how I was being perceived, or at least having a little bit less control over what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because there's one thing I learned, and this is unrelated to lifting, but when it comes to drinking, let's say the bars are open, everyone goes to the bar and they're like, oh, I got to get my drink in, because usually it's just what they do, but also it's kind of to handle social anxiety and like kind of getting in that flow. But the thing is, it takes time for that to happen anyway. Like, even if you don't drink, even if you do drink, it's going to take you 30 minutes, 40 minutes for you to really warm up socially anyway. And so one thing I challenged myself to do in college was, like, I'd go to bars with my friends like normal. I mean, I love being around people and dancing and listening to music and just having that like banter. But what I realized is, if I could just sit there and be uncomfortable for a little bit longer, and be more aware to my surroundings. Because the thing is, alcohol kind of limits your ability to be aware of your surroundings, and it almost makes you not care. But if you are sober, you get to become aware of the surroundings and aware of the threats and the weaknesses or whatever of the environment. And if you sit there through the discomfort for a little bit longer, you're much more aware of like, what's the right thing to say in the moment, how to talk to different people. If you're trying to meet a girl, you come off a lot better sober than you will drunk, no matter what. Like, I've been rejected more often because I've been a little bit slurry with my voice, because they're like, what the hell? This guy's drunk trying to hit on me. Yeah. But if you're sober, it's like, hey, how are you doing? And they're like, oh my God, you're not like creepy like most of these people are. So
Yeah.
I've challenged myself enough where it's like, look, I'm going to be uncomfortable for like 40 minutes, and then eventually everyone's going to have a good time anyway.
Mm.
And I get to sleep tomorrow and get all the benefits of sleep. And I don't have
Yeah.
to wonder what I said or what I did and whether or not it was good.
Yeah.
So
Literally.
my hot take on alcohol.
Yeah, yeah, it's exposure therapy, right? If you go to
Yeah.
a psychologist or like a counselor or something, and you tell him you have social anxiety, he's gonna get you to go like just do what scares you, like incrementally, more intensely, in order to get over that fear. And if you are one of these people who needs a drink just to socialize, then probably the best thing for you is to not drink and
Yeah.
force yourself to socialize anyway.
Just like sit there. It's so uncomfortable. Like it's so uncomfortable the first few times because one, everyone's like, where's your drink? Why aren't you drinking? Why are you not drunk yet? Like, and it's like, hey, I don't need to do this. And then the other thing is they're like, why would you go to a bar if you don't want to drink alcohol? And it's like, why are you at a bar? Because surely it's not just to drink alcohol. Otherwise, you could do that at home.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I've had to like had so many people tell me this, and it's like, I'm not here to like be creepy. I just want to be with my friends, you know, and I don't want to be drunk. Yeah. And if they want to be drunk, sure, fair enough. I mean, I can at least tolerate them better and be more aware of them.
Yeah.
So anyway, this all impacts lifting somewhat, but at the same time, like being social and that's one reason why lifting is so cool is because it's this one thing that if you're a power lifter, for example, you're not just like a gym bro that just started lifting. You know, there's a certain level of like awareness that you probably have as a lifter if you say I'm a power lifter versus, hey, I go and train, you know, I do bodybuilding.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think you can enjoy it, but it can also be it can be this thing that just takes you over and you can rely on. And I'm not a fan of relying on other things to let me do what I want to do. I always like to back myself into a corner and make it as hard as possible, so that you can find out what you're made of a little bit. So
it feels a lot better too. It's like when you say no to ice cream. Like one, talk about negative consequences. I lucked out because I have like not severe, but it's the parent enough where it's uncomfortable, lactose intolerant.
Okay.
So pretty much all the foods that I loved when I was growing up, if I eat them out of control, and even if a little bit, I'll be on the toilet for like 2 hours, you know, or an hour and a half, some long amount of time in the day where I'm like, oh, why did I do that? And so I've maintained my body weight for like 5 years because anytime I like binge, or not even binge, I don't really binge, but anytime I eat something that has a lot of calories per, you know, volume, I am uncomfortable if it has dairy in it. And so if you eliminate pretty much everything with dairy, and alcohol also makes me uncomfortable. So I pretty much just have like chicken, rice, noodles, egg, like pretty much a strict bodybuilder's diet back in the day. Yeah. To rely on, and it makes it really easy to maintain your weight if you have digestive issues.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually lucky because my whole family has digestive issues apart from me. My mom is celiac, and so is my sister. My other sister has IBS, and so does my dad. So I'm the only one without digestive issues, and I think there's a correlation there.
Sorry? I can't bulk, man. Like I like can't like functionally bulk unless I'm like really vibing with you know, chicken, for example. Like if I start just slamming chicken, which gets so boring and gross over time. Like if that's all you eat, like chicken and rice, oh my gosh, it just gets so boring. And I've tried to pick up like different cooking styles this year as well. Like speaking of the pandemic, how it's impacted my day to day is like cooking with spices.
Some flavor for the white guy. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's not even spice. It's like basic things like garlic. You know, I'm like cooking with garlic and paprika. And yeah, mostly that has been a big bonus. Like before lockdown started, I would only eat chicken fried rice from Trader Joe's. I don't know if you don't have Trader Joe's there, but it was like a package of chicken fried rice. So good. I would have it 3 meals a day, and it had a really good distribution of protein, carbs, and fat. Like I remember because I had it 3 times a day. It had 8 grams of fat. I think it had 22 grams of protein and like 50 grams of carb, which is really solid. You know, if you have 3 of those a day, you're only getting 36 grams. Well, that was per serving. Per bag, per bag. I think it was like triple that. And I have that 3 meals a day: lunch, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I wouldn't have to think about it. Just turn on the stove. I could do my work. 5 minutes later, it's ready to go. Anyway, long story short is, unless you get creative, it's hard to bulk if you're someone like me and you got a lot of issues. But it's nice because you can maintain your weight for a while.
Yeah. Chances are you're not going to get fat.
Yeah.
So you can continue to take your top off for your Instagram.
Looking good for Instagram is an important value of mine.
Yeah. Is it really?
I mean, luckily, I was born with good facial hair. I wasn't born with facial hair. That'd be weird. Come out the womb with some nice mustache.
I was straight out the womb with leg hair, so we're the opposite, bro. I'm head to toe. I'm like a Yeti.
Once I started lifting more, like in college, was when my facial hair started growing and my self-perception increased, a lot more as it filled out. Like it's like natural contour for the man, it's nice.
You can look like you have a jawline without having a jawline.
Yeah, like I'll bring my chin up a little bit, and I'm like, if I didn't have this here, it would be very round.
Yeah. No, I can't shave. I look 30 with the beard. Yeah. I look 13 with a clean face. I swear to God, it's not a good look for me.
Yeah, it's nice to look old, especially for 22. I mean, I wouldn't have thought it. I thought you were 27. Seriously. So
yeah, I was called, like, I remember I was 20. I was in the gym and there was this American guy. He was in the army and he was stationed in Ireland for some reason. And I got talking to him and he thought I was 32 when I was 20. So I didn't know whether to be insulted or to be happy about the fact. Well, I've looked very old my whole life. So
does it get you places? Do people like, as a coach, do you think you coach people, right? You're a coach?
Yeah. I started coaching. So yeah, that's a good segue into it. I started coaching when I was 17, actually. I started off powerlifting when I was like 14, and I started coaching when I was 17. And I actually genuinely think looking a bit older and being able to speak a bit like an adult helped me a lot starting off. I feel like my experiences as a teenager helped me a lot getting into coaching, because when I played sport, I was pretty good by Irish standards for like what I did. Now, if I go abroad, I get smoked, but because Ireland is not very good at a lot of things other than like rugby. We're fucking good at rugby, but I would always play with the adults, right? I would be 12, 13, 14, and I would be training and playing with 20, 30-year-olds. So I knew I was kind of a bit mature. I knew how to speak to older people. So when I was 17 and I wanted to get into coaching, I already knew how to speak to everybody. I didn't feel like a child trying to converse with somebody that I had no relation to, because I pretty much had that exposure my whole way through the teenage years.
That's really interesting, because I don't have the exact same story, but I very much, I've always had older like friends. And very similarly, I started coaching at 17 as well. And it was just like you described. It's like the only limiter here is that I might not have all of the answers yet, but I never felt like, hey, hey man, do you want to work with me? Like, hi.
Yeah.
I had the confidence that it was needed to communicate, and the verbiage, I think, to communicate with people that were looking for help to get stronger. And I think that's pretty cool that you also had that.
Yeah, for sure. And you started off with a name called High Fly Training Systems, right?
High Fly Strength Systems. Yeah. How'd you find me? Did I share a video or something like that?
No, I went for a little stalk. I wanted to make sure
nice.
I knew how. I wanted to make sure we had something to talk about. Where did that name come from?
I really like the idea of, like, I don't know, like growth. Like, first, the most obvious reason that I got that name was that there is a windsurfing company, and there is a windsurfing company called High Fly.
Okay.
And I had a sail called High Fly, and I thought it was cool. And then I thought, like, well, what does it even mean? And then I thought of like a bird, and how cool it'd be to like have like a bird as a logo, because they like fly, and they're, you got to jump out of like when birds fly, from what I understand, like sometimes they jump out of their nest and they start flapping their wings, and then they're like, oh shit, I can fly. I don't know. It's kind of like this idea of like elevating your ability, kind of a trope. It's where the company Rise came, I don't know if you've heard of them. It's
a
like
Canadian bloke, is it?
I think so. Oh, I think there's like a Rise training or something.
Okay.
It's like it's some similarity there. It's just like the idea of like rising. So my tagline was rise from within. And I don't really know how I like dug into it, but I just thought high fly was cool. Yeah. I don't know. That's kind of how it was. I had a windsurfing company. I liked the name. I figured high fly strength might bring, and hired some guy in Fiverr to make me a logo. And I'm like, sick. This is cool.
Nice. And how long after you started coaching did you get to work with RTS and Mike Teixeira?
I started coaching with RTS about a year and a half or 2 years after I started High Fly Strength Systems. The initiation of it was when I was 17. That's when I started developing it. I was coaching a few people under no affiliation, and then started that and started YouTube videos and stuff that were horrible, by the way. Speaking of growth, look at my first YouTube video on High Fly Strength Systems on YouTube, and I'm, got this horrible camera, no microphone. I'm like filming in the windiest location possible by this lake near my house. It's horrible. Anyway, started doing that, and then I got to a point where I had like 15 clients, and I was working like all the time. Like it was absurd because I was also in university and I didn't have any time for anything. And I'm like, how am I going to scale this to a point where I can like make enough money so that when I graduate, I don't have to go do something I don't want to do. And I realized I needed a mentor because there's probably a lot of things that I'm doing right now that I, could be doing a better job of. So I reached out to Mike. I reached out to a lot of companies. I reached out to pretty much all the companies that I knew and had somewhat of a connection with, because I was in a lot of Facebook groups back in the day. And so I was able to reach out to like everyone and DM people. Because back in the day, like everyone would, you DM anyone, they just respond to you. And I did. So I was able to get my name out there and comment on a lot of people's posts. So luckily for me, when I reached out to Mike, he was like, "Oh yeah, I've seen your stuff on Facebook. I've seen you make posts. Like you seem excited and like this is going to be a career for you." And so I think it was about a year and a half after I started working with clients where I was like, reach out to Mike. I emailed him in like the middle of the summer, going into my sophomore year of university. And I was like, man, how am I going to get, how am I going to make myself, how am I going to graduate and not have to go to some corporate job? So I told Mike, look, I'm going to be doing this with you or without you. Like, as a career path, I'd rather do it with you, and I'd rather help you along the way. I'll intern if you need me to. I'll do what I can to, improve your videos and content and everything. What do you say? And he's like, well, I don't really know how I feel about internships, but let me give you a call. And I was like, holy shit, Mike's going to call me on my phone. Like, he didn't even Mike didn't post anything on social media. Like his Facebook account was private. Like, he would keep to himself for the most part. And so to be able to talk with a guy that wrote the reactive training manual, the book that I thought, oh my God, this actually answers so many of these questions that I didn't even know. When lifting became like powerlifting became more popular within like our age group, there was percentage-based programs for the most part. I mean, 5-3-1 was the biggest thing. And at the time, like Matt Ogus was like, I'm running 5-3-1. We got 85% weeks, 80%, 90%, whatever it is. And I always was wondering, if I'm trying to do this for an individual, like, how do I know what percentages to use? Like, how am I supposed to know that? What if it's not the right number? Like, what if they get weaker? Like, how do I maintain confidence each week that this is the right stuff to do? And Mike's book really helped to explain and fill in the gaps. I'm like, okay, so this makes sense to me, because before it didn't make sense. I was never confident with just blindly following some like guide.
Yeah.
And this one allowed a little bit more customization. So anyway, to get him to call me was pretty awesome. And then he's got our call. I told him, look, I'm pretty passionate about this. I want to make a lot of money. I want to work with a lot of people. I want to learn from you. I want to learn how to do this thing, and let's do it. So he's like, okay, sounds good to me. I'll get you first client, sign some documents and you'll get your first client in a few weeks. I'm like, really? You're going to give me a client? He's like, yeah. Okay. All right. I won't screw this up.
Yeah. And that book you were talking about, that's the RTS manual, right?
Yes. The reactive training manual.
Yeah. That was one of the first books I read on strength training as well. It's over 10 years old right now, right?
Yeah. I mean, the company is 12 years old. So I think the book's around 10 years old or something.
Yeah, I think that is still one of the best books you can read if you're just getting into strength training. It's probably some things in it are probably a little outdated. And I think Mike has said that himself. but if you do give it a read through, it's very useful because it obviously describes RPE, and it has the like load drops and like fatigue percents and stuff like that, which are very useful concepts to keep in your mind if you're ever trying to get into coaching, or even if you're just programming for yourself and you want to know a little bit more about how to do it all.
It definitely gives you more perspective on options and how to make your own choices for, what exercises to use, how many days a week can you train. Like the biggest thing, the most valuable thing I think as a coach is to recognize the options that you have at your disposal to make creative decision. Because the longer you work with an athlete, the more creative you'll need to be until you just start recycling all your ideas. Like you have to be ready to be creative. The good thing is you don't necessarily need the creativity to come externally forever, but if you're just starting out, I think it's really important to have a good understanding of what people have done before you to get people stronger, and then you can build your own, what's called a toolkit. As you literally work with an athlete, they tell you something, you say, oh, that makes sense. Well, let me build something around this parameter that you just provided for me.
Yeah,
I
think some coaches and some people they're too hung up on the idea like it has to be one way, and like, okay, this is how we do it and I'm not going to veer too far out of it. I don't think enough people support the idea that you do need to be creative with how you approach things. I think some people are far too hung up on the idea that if it's not in a research paper, or it's not like what's the term?
If it's not evidence-based,
then I'm not doing it. And I think there's tons of value in being evidence-based, but if all you ever do is get everything from a book or online and you don't veer outside of that, you're losing so much of what you can do with yourself and other people.
Yeah, well, because most things in exercise science in particular they're behind. The science is behind the practice, because you're only going to get a study published if the idea has generated enough hype to be validated into a study, or you're really smart, scientist who's got this revolutionary idea they want to try. But they're also limited on scope, they're limited on time, they're limited on participants. So it's really valuable to like look at what the research is showing you, but that should just be a starting point for you to build from, not a descriptive or prescriptive, rule book or something. Like
it's not an instruction manual. It's best advice.
Yeah, and it's like you can bet your ass that most of the exercise science data is at least studied well enough for you to take something from it. Like there's a lot of stuff that is fabricated. If you were in the industry for a while, like for example, like Brett Contreras is like hip thrust, obsession. Yeah. Where he was trying to convince the world that hip thrusts were just as effective as squats and deadlifts for like leg growth. No. There's like they had to rescind a few papers, I think, or like modify them to a degree where it's like, one, the EMG studies are not descriptive enough or useful enough to know that just because activity level is high, it doesn't mean that it's the same movement. In fact, like more use, like from a practical level, even if they were the same movement, have you ever done a barbell hip thrust before? Like, I don't know that many people are like, what I'd rather do is put this on my hip bone and thrust it into the air while putting my back on like a bench pad.
Yeah, I've done hip thrusts. There was a period of time a few years ago where I was listening to Brett Contreras and I did them pretty religiously. I can't say they helped all too much as a powerlifter. They fucked up my hips. My hips had bruises on them all the time. They made my ass sore, and that just took away from squats and deadlifts, really.
Well, Brett Contreras is one of those people where, one, like he's like not a good dude, and two, he had the intention of trying to convince the world that hip thrusts are all you need, so that all of the content that he creates could be about how you can be a female and lift without having big legs. So he needed the information to be validating his preference, so he could sell books and PDFs and things like that to validate, his bias. And a lot of times exercise scientists, well, not a lot of times, a few times exercise scientists will do that. Where they have the hypothesis, right? And then they also have the hope that this does tell the story they're trying to tell. So then they'll manipulate the data in a way or the statistics in a way where it's like, hey, look at this. I was right all along. And,
I think there's two ways it can go. If you're not well read on things, you can think you're smarter than you are. But then when you are well read on certain topics, like Brett Contreras, your own intelligence can get in the way of just doing the right thing. You can think you're smarter than you are because you've proven it in other fields somewhere else. So now you think, right, I'm credited for this one thing. Now my intelligence and my IQ can apply to loads of other things, when it really doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Especially for something like powerlifting. I like to, like, getting stronger is a thinking man's game, but you can still get stronger by being an idiot. you can. There's so many, like, just, we call it farmer strong in Ireland. It's like you can just, like, a farmer can just throw around hay bales, and he's like, and then he goes into a powerlifting meet and he totals 800. You can get stronger by being an idiot, but you do need to.
If you're not injury prone, you can do a lot. It can do pretty much anything.
Yeah. If you just don't get injured, then you can continue to get stronger very quickly for a very long time.
And it's like, that's the thing that people don't get when they're just starting out, because I don't think anyone ever thinks that they're going to be the one that gets injured. So it's a lot easier to be like, what's the best way to train? And if you're working with someone that has an agenda, like getting testimonials from you, or I want to make this ebook, so I'm going to give you something that is very likely a high risk protocol for most people. Like, hey, you want to get big and strong quick? Do all the volume and as much frequency as possible.
Like Norton's
you'll get
program,
strong.
Right?
Yeah. And it's like, but how long can you sustain that? And that's why with my new company, Zao Strength, one of my primary kind of missions is sustainability, because as a coach who's been coaching powerlifting specifically for, I think, 5.5 years now, because before that I was coaching general strength as well before working with RTS. The most important variable to consider is how long can I keep this person strong, and how can I prevent them from getting injured or minimize the risk, because injury is very likely the most common reason for someone stopping lifting in general, or just discontinuing coaching with me, because when you have the mindset that you want to be the biggest and strongest, and then you get like an adductor tear or you strain your pec or something like that, if you're not prepared for that, it can really mess with your mental ability to, like, 1, trust this person that you're working with, 2, trust yourself, and 3, trust that in the future you won't get hurt again. And so it takes some time to figure out, for a lifter who never thought they're going to get injured, who has been doing quote unquote everything they can to stay, get strong, for them to get injured is like, it can be catastrophic.
I have seen so many people like that. There used to be so many really, really good Irish junior powerlifters, sub-junior powerlifters, and they're just not doing it anymore. And it's because they all got injured. Their coach or their mentor decided, no, we're going to keep going with all of this. We're going to continue getting you squatting fucking 4 days a week. We're going to grind you into the dirt. And then there is this term that people throw around. It's like, you're a talented lifter. It's like, it's a very basic thing. Like, you stand in one place and it's a very linear movement pattern. There's not a lot of talent involved here. You're a strong individual, but there's only so much weight and there's only so much stress. And some people, their ego gets in the way of that. They think they're better than they are. They do their first meet and they get loads of attention for it, and then they're like, right, fuck it, I'm gonna double down on this. I want to be the next John Hack or the next Aston Ruska, and they get injured. And then I've seen so many times people just leave the sport after a year or two of that. Like, when there's a new up and coming sub junior or there's a new junior and they're all getting this Instagram fame, I'm like, I don't buy into it. Just let's see what they're doing in a year, 2 years. Let's see if they're still here, because I used to be like that as well. I was never like world level, and I still amn't, but I squatted 250 and I deadlifted 270 kilos for the first time when I was 17. I thought I was going to be the shit. I was like, I'm going to squat 300 in bloody 6 months. And then I got injured and I didn't hit a single PB on my squat or deadlift for like 2 years. But the thing that I accredit most to coming back from that, getting stronger, and just being the capable lifter that I am now, is just continuing to show up, working within my means, not doing so much work that I'm putting myself at risk to get injured, because I've been very injury prone over the years with whatever sports I've been doing. So if I know myself, if I do too much work, I'm gone. I'm not getting stronger. I regress very quickly. But the thing you have to rely on is just your perseverance. You just have to keep showing up, and that's
But
one of the biggest things.
also you have to develop an awareness of what is too much, because I think when you first get hurt, it's like, oh, it's just a one-off thing. You know, it was an accident, or it was just this or that. And a lot of times all people can think of is, when can I get back to doing all the things I was doing before, versus knowing that I'm hurt now, what should my new training approach be, you know, or how should I modify what I was doing in the past so that this doesn't happen again? And you can never be very certain, but things like chronic pain, for example, are much harder to deal with than like, oh, I strained my pec. Because it's like, you get some pretty serious signals, I think, when you're about to strain a muscle. All of the chronic pain stuff, it's not obvious what's going to cause or lead to chronic pain, you know, or like I call it like a flare up. Like, it's not obvious what like my volume threshold is going to be for the week. It's not obvious what's going to cause me to feel more pain in my hip this week than next week. And it takes time to find that. Like, you have to try to, because I think most people's inclination is, I want to do as much as I can, because if I can do more, I'll probably get stronger. I don't know if that's true for everyone. I mean, it's definitely not true for me. Like, I thrive on doing the least, you know, like I do like 3 sets. I literally have been doing 3 sets of squat and 3 or 4 sets of deadlift a week. And I've been doing that since the pandemic started. And before then too. I have missed out on leg press. I love leg pressing, but I don't have a leg press, and I hate split squat. So like I said before, I'm kind of lazy. If I don't like doing something, I just don't do it. So I didn't do bulk like split squats, but I'm like, I like squatting. And as of late, man, my squat's been I have had an all-time PR on all 3 of my lifts. Like, I don't know why, but 3 sets of each, man. What study are you going to read that tells you you're going to hit PRs if you're doing 3 sets of squat and deadlift a week?
Yeah.
Once a week too. I squat once a week and I deadlift once a week on different days.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's my lower body training, you know?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, a period of time where I was at one of my strongest and most capable was when I was only squatting once a week. I had injured my hip. I've had chronic hip like problem throughout my life. There's a lot of imbalances in there, but I took time off completely from squatting. I was just split squatting and deadlifting. And then I came back and I slowly introduced squatting again, to the point where I was doing 3 sets of squats once a week, like literally the exact same as you, not even a top set. And that was when I had broken through my squat plateau. I hadn't PB'd more than 250 in 2 years. And then I hit 265 and then 272 consecutively about 8 to 10 weeks after I had reintroduced squatting again. And that was from a baseline of doing like a 180 3x3. That's kilos. So they're like 400 pounds. There's so much.
Nice baseline.
There's so much to be found in doing the least amount possible and then building off of that.
Yeah, like, it takes time. I mean, you have to be very patient, because again, you have to have, going back to our combo about negative consequences of your actions, like, you have to have enough negative feedback to convince the average person that doing just one time a week squatting is going to be good enough. Like, if you are getting into it and you want to get as strong as possible, all of the stuff that you read is going to say squat 3 times a week, bench 4 times, deadlift twice. Like, that's the optimal frequency. And it's like, it's such a useless term, by the way, because unless you truly believe that we're not that different as athletes, then sure, there's an optimal level. But it's like, someone asked me on a live I was doing like a few months ago. It was a well-known coach actually as well. It was kind of interesting, which is good. I mean, I think it's always good to kind of question things even as you get more established. But they said like, hey, why are you, what was it? It was like, don't you think individualization is a bit overhyped? Because at the end of the day, there's not a lot of differences between us as athletes. And I was like, well, people aren't hiring me as a coach to find their similarities between other athletes. They're paying me to figure out what makes them different. Like, I'm working with people to figure out what are the variables that are unique to them that we can capitalize on effectively for their growth. And you have to have a lot of buy-in for people to believe, hey, you know what? I know that all the research that you've ever seen is going to tell you that you should do the most, but based on what you're telling me, we got to do less. You know, people are different enough for their training for like people are different enough as athletes where their training should be designed at least around them as much as you can. I mean, you don't need every aspect of the program to be like individualized to the degree where you're like, every set has to be auto-regulated, but you should know at least enough pattern around average intensity and total sets so you can handle like what the total stress is that you tend to be able to hover around and make adjustments within these kind of framework. Like once you have like kind of a baseline of like, okay, this is too much, this is too little, you find that sweet spot. You can do a lot within the sweet spot. But if you want to play around with expanding the sweet spot, I definitely say be slow and take your time with it, because it only takes a few sessions of too much work where I'm not saying you'll get injured, but if you have chronic pain, they flare up. Like I've had sessions where I do too much and like the next week I'm like, oh man, how long is it going to take for my hip pain to go away? And it's like, oh, it's kind of demotivating, especially if you're on a grind and you have a meet coming up. You got to prepare for.
Yeah, that's where I think like auto-regulation can become a bad part of your program. Not that auto-regulation is bad, but let's say on a day you're feeling just super, super good, you can very easily do too much and convince yourself that, okay, so I've got a 4x4 at 7. That suggests that all your sets need to be auto-regulated. So you just push all of your sets as much as you can. And then you just feel like dog crap for the rest of the day and for the rest of the week. And that's not what it's about. It's not about one individual session. What I preach, probably one of the things that I've preached the most over the years to people is not about what you can do in one session. It's not about what you can do for your top set. It's about how much consistent training sessions you can get in over the course of 6 months to a year to 2 years, because it's not strength isn't built overnight. And you're not going to be Ashton Ruska next year just because today's training session went really well. He
Ashton
never
listens to this and it's just like, what is it about me?
What is it about me? No, but you know what I mean? It's about consistent training.
Yeah.
There's no other sport where if you just do more today, that means you're going to be a world champion in 6 months. It's about consistent training sessions over time. And you can't have too much novelty within your training sessions either. It'll be too much of a shock to your system. If one day you do like a 4x4 with like 180 kilos on squat, and then the next week you're feeling absolutely just banging and you do like 210, 220 kilos, but you grind the shit out of it. You're not, that's your ceiling. You've reached your ceiling on like week 2 of the block. And now you're going to, it happens so much. And then you're going to feel like shit for week 3, week 4, week 5, however long your block is. And that is not conducive to consistent training over a long period of time.
It's one of the hardest things to say that was good enough for the day.
Yeah.
It's so hard, especially on the good days, man. Like you said, it's like I had a great week last week. In fact, I think my deadlift strength was probably stronger. Like I probably could have hit an all-time, like whether it's like I've hit my best deadlift was 550 when I was 19, and it was on a deadlift bar, and I've been doing my best to get back there since then.
Yeah.
Because after that, I just kept getting hurt over and over and over again. And so my goal has always been to like make my raw squat better than my best squat with wraps, because I used to squat with wraps in the USPA, bench more than I did back then as well, and deadlift more than my best deadlift on the deadlift bar. And like I'm pretty damn sure that, I mean, last week I hit 220 for a triple out. Like I called it an 8 because that was what the program said it was supposed to be, but I'm pretty sure it was like a 7. Like okay. I don't know if you saw it, but it moved so well.
Yeah,
I could have hit my all-time PR that day. Yeah. Like put it on the bar, load it up. But yeah. I was thinking, okay, cool, I can do that. But everything I've been doing before this is the reason why my strength is where it is now. So how about just do the thing, move on, have a good session, like keep the RP where it was.
Yeah.
Don't have 7 sets just so you can like prove to yourself that you can do more. It's like trust that you can do more when you need to, you can.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing you said there. It's like you don't have to prove to yourself that you can do more. You don't actually have to do it. Like if you're using RPE, well then like a single at 7 is going to be in and around a certain percentage of your 1 rep max. So you either trust the program and you trust the numbers that you have on the page, or you don't, you know? And I think far too many people just need that, like that validation, you know, that's why a lot of people get into it, because strength training is so easy, like compared to other sports. It's not easy to be like really, really good at it, like a world champion powerlifter, it's probably one of the hardest things you're going to be able to do. But like for a beginner or an intermediate, getting into strength training, it's like a very low barrier to entry. There's beginner gains. It's very easy to see a lot of progress at the beginning, and I did it. You just start maxing out all the time anytime you feel like you're a bit stronger. And then you can get into that really bad habit of just always needing to validate where you are. And it's a really negative habit to get into. It's not something, no world champion in the IPF, in the bloody GPC, nobody is out there maxing out all the time. Nobody is out there pushing their working sets as much as they possibly can all of the time. You talk to, like, in my opinion, Taylor Atwood is probably the best IPF lifter outside of like Ashton Ruska, just in terms of what he's been able to do in the 74 kilo class, like and how much space he put between him and his competitors. He's out here doing like 240 kilo deadlifts for a top triple, and the bloke can deadlift 320 kilos. That's where he starts off, like 8 to 12 weeks out. He doesn't need to validate himself. He never did.
He gives himself room to grow, like almost every session. And that also adds to some, I call it mental momentum, where it's like you build this mental, build up. It's like, confidence over time. That's why I like lower RPE work, because if you do too much at 9 work, I mean, you're getting the validation that you're looking for the most part.
Yeah.
If you do, like, for example, a lot of lifters will be like, you're only want me to do a triple out of 7, but I can do more. And I'm like, I know.
It's not about what you can do. It's about what you should.
Yeah. And what you will be able to do in 7 weeks. And it's not that that's always the most useful thing, but when it is useful, you have to convince yourself. So one thing about confidence is that there may be a technical difference from your at 7 to at 9. It shouldn't be a different thing. But a lot of times, if you're not comfortable applying the same technique with your light loads to your heavy loads, there's definitely a need or a utility in getting close to your max to see where the most effective form is for you. But it's also really important that once you know how to lift heavy weight, like, you know, the movement patterns, you know, the solidity differences, you know how to do your bracing when your nerves and anxiety increase, that, okay, you can do this, you know how to do it, you know what the difference in feel is. Like, you have to remember, you have to remind yourself of it sometime. But once you know it, it's like, all right, let yourself move the weight well. You don't need to grind to get stronger. You know, you can get stronger in a lot of different ways. On that note, can we take a 2-minute break?
Yeah, we can. Yeah,
I gotta pee.
Go for it, bro. Yeah,
this is minute 59 on my recording. I don't know what it is. Thank you for your patience.
No worries.
We just like have a random like 5 minutes period of silence. Forget to cut out.
Yeah. I'll be editing it, so it's all right.
Okay, cool.
But on that point that we were talking about, you were like, people they sometimes need the confirmation that they can maintain that technique under heavy weight. I think people don't compete enough to have that confidence. There's no other sport where you only compete twice a year. Like the best rugby players, the best soccer players, any other sport, you're competing every weekend. You know, powerlifting is a sport where you have such a low exposure to the competition environment, and that is, it's necessary to a point. There's only so many times you can properly max out during the year and it actually be beneficial for you. After what, if you max out 4 or 5 times a year, that's not good for you. You're going to be far too fatigued to be able to build off of that. There's going to be points too many times during the year where you're just building up too much fatigue. Like, for a lot of people, especially the stronger you are, it takes longer to get over that fatigue from a powerlifting meet than it does for a lot of other people.
It's that mental, the mental momentum I was talking about.
Yeah.
You know, you kill it. You can kill it if you put all your mental energy, all your physical energy into hitting your top single out of 10 on squat, bench, and deadlift.
Absolutely. I think
mentally, to do that, man, you got to be like zoned in. And
you're fucking nutter if you can do that 5 times a year, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that I got a lot of people to do over the years is compete as much as you can. So if you're new to powerlifting, don't max out in a powerlifting meet, probably for a very long time. So I've gotten people to compete 4 or 5 times a year before, but we pick, like, it's quite lucky that before the powerlifting calendar even starts, that there's a rough plan of what meet is going to be where, when can you compete, this is a qualifier for that, and you can plan out over like very, very roughly when you're probably gonna max out. I still think if you want to be a really good powerlifter, you have to be very comfortable in that environment, and you do need to compete as much as possible. I have gotten people to compete and on their third attempt hit like 7-8 RPE absolute. Like that's where you cap it, and I think it has only benefited them to do that. You're proving to yourself that you can actually step up to the plate in that environment. You're getting used to what it's like to warm up in the warm-up room. I don't know what it's like over in America, but everything is bigger over in America, so there's probably a lot of space in warm-up rooms, but there's definitely not here. Powerlifting meets in Ireland are generally held in very small independent gyms, so they're very cramped spaces, which can get really uncomfortable. I personally am very uncomfortable in those kind of places, so that's something you really have to get over if you want to be a good powerlifter in Ireland, and competing as much as you can will allow you to do that. And if you are one of these people who need that confirmation that you can hold up your technique when it matters, like under heavyweight 8-9 RPE, competing as much as you can is a necessity, really. I don't think competing twice a year is enough if you really, really want to be a very good powerlifter.
I don't know, man. I mean, I think you could probably coach it. I think you could coach it. Like you can teach people and set up an environment that's close. And yeah, you might need a few competitions to dial it in.
Yeah.
And competing early and often is nice, but also it can encourage interesting mindsets when it comes to training. If you go back to what we were talking about in relation to one, mental momentum, and then two, the pressure of being better each time.
Yeah.
Like it's important that as a coach, you're communicating the expectations, and it sounds like you are for sure, but it can be easy to conflate competing 4 to 5 times a year with needing each one of those competitions to be better than the last. Or it's important to recognize like, all right, we're doing this competition, but the intention is practice, or the intention is, give yourself some opportunity to hit some singles, but it's not super critical that during these training sessions, you're just balling out. Like,
yeah.
And that's why bottom up training is so much more exciting, because you get to learn about the progress and the process to progress for each lifter in a healthier way. Because one, if you're doing bottom up approaches correctly, you're probably not using percentages only. You have some metric to help figure out if you're improving or not. And two, you have the time to build up the strength, and more or less when that strength is going to peak. So with bottom up training, I found it's a lot easier to teach the lifter about their abilities without needing them to compete, because at some point when the peak week is happening. They're exposing themselves to potential PR levels every block without the need to max out. And you could easily turn any of those peak week into mock meet week at any time. You could do it whenever you want. And you could even say, all right, you're not going to hit a single out of 10, but maybe the block was structured in a way where you just have triples or sets of 5 and you're getting stronger with those. You can literally just turn your peak week into, all right, we're going to be warming up for singles at the end of the week. And so you can test this time. And so while there are a lot of nuances to competing in powerlifting, if you have a good coach or you work with someone that's experienced in the process, they can guide you pretty quickly through a meet. They can handle the warm-up room with you, so you're not just thrown out there like a sitting duck.
I'd agree with most of that. But I still don't think that you can form your training and you can put people into situations where it's as close to a meet as possible. But the added pressure of competing against somebody else is not something that you can replicate. Like when you have to do this lift, the clock is on and it's ticking down, and you have to get this lift to win. You can't replicate that in training, and you never will be able to replicate that in training.
Yeah.
So if you want to get good at powerlifting, you do have to compete. I don't think you're ever going to be able to program that or coach people through that. I think if you are an athlete, you have to be able to trust yourself 100% to be able to do the lift when it matters. Training is a place where it matters a little bit less. You don't get it.
Yeah. The anxiety and the pressure of missing,
even if it's just an RP8 meet where, like I said, you're only hitting RP8s on your third attempt. Still don't want to fuck that up, man, because next time you're going to compete and it really does matter, you're doing your qualifying meet and you can qualify for that meet just doing RP8s on your third attempt. You need to perform, because
you got to do it on that rep too. You have one rep to do it versus, like, obviously in training you can give it another shot.
Yeah, there's a fourth attempt in training, but there's no fourth attempt in a proper powerlifting meet.
Yeah, which is why the nuances of your heavy set technique is really important. Like, people a lot of times will talk about how, like, oh, it doesn't matter, like, stop thinking about your technique so much. And it's like, the differences between your ability to perform on in training at like sub RP 10 loads, they might not be different if you're experienced, but if you are still learning how to optimize your own leverages, figuring out what that single out of 10 feels like and how to move your body in a way that, for example, you can slow down your eccentric like crazy on your squat, and it probably won't impact things at lower RPE loads, because even if the fatigue associated with the increased eccentric loading is high, it's not so high that you can't finish the set. But you might find that when you do a max attempt, you got to speed up your eccentric a little bit so you have enough power out of the hole. Or you might not. You might find that you can pause your squat at single at 10 loads and it's fine. But if you never tested it, it might floor you, and you'd be like, oh, damn, I didn't know that about myself. Yeah,
that's true. I think the less experienced you are, you can't just go into a set and not think about what you're doing. You just can't. There's like for an advanced lifter, there's a lot of utility in just getting into that flow state and doing what comes naturally. But if you're a less experienced lifter, and especially if you're somebody who didn't really come from any kind of sporting background and powerlifting is your first meet, you need to be aware of exactly what you're doing, because there's a learning curve that you've not been through yet. You probably don't know where your knees, hips and back are in space if you've not done any kind of dynamic sports growing up over the years. You can't just get into a flow state or whatever that is for you if you're an inexperienced lifter, because you quite literally don't know what you're doing yet.
Yeah. But even if you're good, I mean, this is depending on the lifter, I suppose. But man, I look at lifters like Bryce Lewis is a good example. He's been world champion a few times, I think.
Yeah.
And is one of the strongest lifters I've ever met. Him and Mike, Mike Tuchscherer are some of the strongest lifters I've met who are still grinding and still pushing. I'm not going to say that I know exactly how they think about their lifts, but I would say that they think about their lifts and how to optimize their technique, even still, as they get stronger and notice different pains and different pressures. And like, if you get hurt, you got to modify your technique. You got to think about it. You got to think about how the pressure is being applied. Like, your problems don't get any less. They continue, but you get better at solving them. So like, technical adjustments are a little bit more calculated. And so you probably know what the impact of a technical adjustment is as you get more advanced. Whereas if you're a beginner, it's probably, you're not as aware of how the technical change is helping you or hurting you.
Yeah.
But your coach might see it, and you can look at your videos and say, oh, I see why this didn't move well. And so I think even as you get into that flow state, you're probably going to analyze it later, even as like a 10-year vet in the sport.
Definitely. You can just tell by the way Bryce Lewis talks on social media that he is always thinking about his lift. I've heard him talk before about where he feels his foot pressure and how, like, he squats high bar, and to the unit, like, by all accounts he's got a very pretty looking squat, but even he's not one of the best in the world because he doesn't think about his technique all the time. Exactly. He's very conscious about what he is doing. He is so conscious about what he's doing that he can feel the tiny differences in pressure between, like, oh, I was over my toes a bit too much here. Or
it's like a NASCAR.
And he can make those adjustments very, very well because he's got such a command over his body through that movement pattern.
Yeah.
But because of that command over his body, he can feel when he's off to like the 1 to 2%.
It's like a F1 driver. I don't follow F1 very much.
Yeah.
I know it's more popular in Europe, but it's like they upgrade their car and they're probably more sensitive to the adjustments, and they have to have the experience to be able to maximize the changes. If anything, when you're a beginner, you probably won't even know what to do with the information of foot pressure, for example.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how that impacts your max effort. Yeah. Whereas if you've trained for years and you know the differences between putting too much pressure in your toe versus your heel, you know whether or not that's going to make a 5 kilo difference at your top set, that's really useful. So like as you get more skilled, I don't think it's that you think about your technique less. I just think it's more focused in how you and it sounds like we're in agreement here, but just for the people listening, like I always hear that this argument of like, don't think about your technique too much. And it's like, that's not even true.
That's not
even what happens. Most people think more about the technique as they get better because they are trying to maximize the last 2 kilos on their deadlift or their bench press.
Yeah. Because being human, like it's a cliche, but being human means you're inherently flawed. So if you stop thinking about your technique, you're gonna get lazy, you're gonna go back into old movement patterns, and your technique is probably gonna regress to a point. Stop thinking about it like that, which is never good. You can't stop
and it's not
thinking.
it's not even like you change like foot position or hand grip. Like you don't like, I'm gonna do high bar, low bar, high bar, low bar. Like you don't gotta do that.
No.
It's the like half of an inch or half of a centimeter change that you start noticing these things. Like, for example, I was squatting with uneven plates for like the last year and a half. And I thought it was because I'm somehow like a novice squatter still, because I don't have a super strong squat. But I was like, am I really like that imbalanced?
Yeah.
And because it felt like all the weight was on my right side of my shoulder all the time. I don't know why, but I just kept choosing the heavier weight to be on the right side because the pound plates I was using had about 5 to 10 pounds of variance. I mean, the more of the less expensive plates that I used, the more the variance would be apparent. But I never actually weighed them, and I didn't want that to be a part of my mental approach to the lift, so I just would ignore it. But then once I realized, all right, let's weigh these things because this is feeling off, and I hated squatting for a while because of the imbalance. So I weighed them and I recognized, oh my gosh, like no wonder this plate is 5 pounds heavier than the other one. I'm using 4 of these on the bar. So I bought more plates. I'm waiting for them to come because like the variance difference is significant at the heavier loads. When you're maxing out, it's like 5 pounds more on the other side when you're maxing out is enough to be like, man, I don't want to do this. This hurts. This is going to feel weird. Like you don't want to have those thoughts when you're about to max out. You want to think this is even. The only reason that I'm going to miss this is because of my, uniform symmetrical strength.
Yeah. And that's where training on actual competition equipment really starts to matter the better you get. I trained in a commercial gym with whippy bars and plates that did not weigh the same weight for years. And one of the best things I ever did was start training in a gym that had just competition equipment, competition rack, bench, bars, plates, everything. And my lifts went up by dozens of kilos in about 6 to 8 months from just doing that. And it was the ability to consistently hit each lift with the same technique every time, because I feel like the whippier the bar is, the thicker the plates are, which makes the bar bend a bit more. You're not doing the exact same lift every single rep of a set if the bar is always whipping on you like that. The benefit of a stiff ass bar and really thin calibrated plates is that you can do the exact same rep every single time because it's just stuck to your body. And especially with deadlift, like people think that like a deadlift bar is going to be the savior. They're going to deadlift so much more weight. And it's like, oh no, man. Like I actually think if you trained on a stiff bar for the majority of the year, even if you compete on a deadlift bar, that can be one of the best things for you because your technique every single rep is going to be the exact same. You're not going to run into as many injuries. That's another thing with training on comp equipment because there's no whip. Like when you're walking out a squat and the bar is whipping on your back, that is AIDS for your lower back. It's so bad. I remember going from competition equipment to having to train in a commercial gym and my back was sore for 2 weeks just after one squatting session.
Or they don't have a center knurling on the plate, or they don't have chalk. Man, You know how many people I work with, I'm like, hey, can you make sure to chalk up your back for bench bench press. And I'm not saying this to like punish them or to make them look bad, but it's like, it's so common to think, oh, well, I'm not at competition, so I'm not going to use the competition stuff. It's like, no, put chalk on your back, drive your freaking back into the bar, make this consistent, because it's so critical for confidence. Like if the bar is slipping on your back, how do you expect to get confident for an extra 10 kilos?
Yeah.
Like,
it's not Ninja Warrior. Like you don't have to make it harder for yourself.
But people love to. And I think it's a little bit of like well, I don't know what it is. I used to do that. I mean, but there is one benefit to not training on comp equipment, is that let's say you train like me at a home gym where I just use what I could for a while.
Yeah.
You get to the place where that has comp equipment and it's like, oh my God, does it feel good? I just joined a gym like last weekend, and I trained on the comp spec stuff, and I was like, wow, I feel so strong. Like,
when did I get this strong?
Yeah, I was like, wow. Imagine not having like half of your barbell like feel an extra 15 kilos heavier. This is like
literally,
because, and it definitely made me feel like, okay, I'm not a problem. The problem isn't me, it's my equipment. It's very easy and almost preferred to say, you know what, it is me. That's the problem, because that's how I am. I'm always thinking I got to improve. I got to do this to make the adjustments. It's really healthy to do that. But then you get equipment that's like, you know what? The equipment was the problem. And you're like, oh, great.
Little confidence booster. It's great for your ego. Yeah.
Like I know how to deadlift. I know how to squat.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited for that. You know, and I think that's one of the potential barriers to entry for like powerlifting, is because you see all these competitors who do have comp equipment, and it can feel like, oh, well, I don't have the best equipment, so I shouldn't train. And it's like, I think that's important too. Like, we're not saying that. I think it's more like, you'll know the difference and you're going to benefit from it, but do your best with what you have, so that when you do get the best stuff, it's kind of like any technology, you know, like if you buy this camera that I have, you don't know how to use it, you're not going to be able to replicate this picture profile or something. Like, you need to know how to use the tech to notice the difference from really good stuff and really bad stuff. And luckily, when you're just starting out, the total strength that you're capable of is the gap of what you're doing and what you're capable of is like this. You know, so any subtle adjustments in technique will start getting closer. But once the gap is like this, it's so much better than to get the equipment, because the limiter probably is the equipment that you have, you know, like, or just having chalk or knurling on the bar. Like, when it's light enough where the bar isn't slipping on your back because the weight isn't high enough, it doesn't matter if you have chalk. But
like, if all you do have access to is a commercial gym, ask the owners or the manager if you can bring in your own bar. Like, make an investment in like an Ohio power bar or something. It's probably the best bang for your buck that you're gonna get. And
so good.
I
bought that for my home gym, and I was like, wow, this is stiff. The knurling is insane.
It's so sharp.
It's so incredibly sharp, but I love it because it's only $300 or something. It was like cheap.
Yeah. Like, I remember the first time I used an Ohio power bar, and it was brand new. I didn't even have to use chalk on my back because it just sunk into my skin. It was that sharp. It was it was an experience. But one thing I did also want to talk about was powerlifting as a sport. I feel like with the likes of the current US Open and everything, and the meet that a lot of USAPL lifters are doing, and they're actually taking a ban for, what's that called again?
The meet that USAPL lifters are doing?
Yeah, it's a money meet. I think it's a hybrid meet.
The hybrid performance or whatever in Miami.
Yeah, I think that's the one. There's a lot of those meets popping up where there's some prize money involved, and it's very attractive to lifters to get into. And I feel like that's a push by some of the more expansive minded people to try and build powerlifting into a mainstream sport. But there is still a difference between what the IPF are doing and what those federations are doing. I feel like the IPF are trying to make it as close to like an Olympic standard meet as possible, whereas some of the bigger money meets, they're going for like the freak show. It's how many freaks can we get in one place, let them use all the steroids, put prize money on the line to make it exciting. And I think it's getting more polarized instead of bringing it together. And I was just wondering how you thought we could try and negate that, because ideally we want powerlifting to be as mainstream a sport as possible to get the most amount of people into it. Like, you're a coach, you want to coach as many people as you can. It's your livelihood. It's same as me. You know, I feel How do you think we could bring it a bit more mainstream over like the next 10 years or so?
I don't know if money is the answer, but I definitely think making it more lifter focused would be useful.
Okay.
I mean, I think IPF and USAPL is very much like top down, whether you want to call it business or not, but it's like, giving all the credit to the president and then to the people that are running it and then and the lifters are at the bottom, it's like, it seems like the lifters are like the bottom priority. And, it makes it difficult for there to be incentive to compete because of the hierarchy of competition. So when hybrid has a money meet, it's really attractive because it's like, here's what you are going to get from participating. Whereas with USAPL IPF stuff, it's like the only thing that you're going to get at best is an invite to go to World. And I think that that's a really attractive thing. I think to be invited to represent your country on a world stage and there is legitimacy to it is attractive. The problem is that when you get there, it's like the most boring competition in existence, dude.
No
like,
music, anything.
There's no music,
no
there's
atmosphere.
no hype, there's no atmosphere. I mean, imagine having the world, competition and you hire like the world's most boring announcer.
Yeah.
Hey, IPF, figure your shit out and understand that nobody wants to be announced to the platform with a monotone. Okay.
Yeah.
Make it exciting.
Yeah.
Make it about the lifter, not about some guy who wants to run the show. No.
Yeah.
Give the excitement that the new generation is expecting for their activities, for their investment into you. Because they can go do whatever they want. They could go get money, have money meet. Like, I'm so sick of the IPF and how they treat their lifters. It's like, great, you have this competition, but then you ruin it by making it boring.
Yeah. They put so much money into making these competitions. They have so many countries. I think it was like over 130 registered countries. They have so many good lifters, so many marketable lifters, and they do absolutely nothing to make it about the lifters. It's more about the fact that it's IPF World than it is who's competing in this meet. It doesn't matter to them who's competing. It's IPF Worlds.
Yeah, it's their meet they're hosting. The only reason people even care about IPF Worlds is because of all of the creative videographers and, media professionals that take the bare minimum of what they're offering and make it look cool.
Yeah.
That's the only reason there's hype around it, in my opinion, for the youth, for the people that are getting into it, is because we make it look cool. We make it look cooler than it is. And also there's some really strong lifters there.
Yeah.
But imagine they actually made Daniela, like at the meet, watching Daniela Mello and Amanda Allen, right? Lawrence. Yeah. Amanda Lawrence compete was so boring. It's like, and Amanda Lawrence is coming up with this 250 kilo deadlift. And then it's like, and Daniela Mello.
Yeah, like, there's no context to it.
There's no context. Like, make it more apparent for the people that are there. Because then you can actually bring people to the competition. And they'd want to be there. People aren't falling asleep in the stadium. It was the most boring competition I've ever been in my entire life. And it's supposed to be the pinnacle of powerlifting. Figure it out. That's what I think. If you want to make it more mainstream, make every aspect of it exciting.
It can be exciting and it can be mainstream. But you have to, like, one of the best things I think that combat sports do very well is that the whole marketing around the event is why these two people are fighting. It's not about,
it's a story.
It's a story. You have to market it. You have to understand why Daniela Mello versus Amanda Lawrence is an important thing to look at. Because if you don't understand that one fact, nobody is going to lift or nobody's going to look at it. Because if you don't, then it's just two people standing in one spot lifting a bar.
Yeah, it's the federation's job to make it about the lifter, tell their story, invest into the people who are making your platform relevant. Because eventually, the thing is that the unregulated aspect I don't find more appealing, but the lifters who just want to compete and show up and make money find it more appealing. The reason why that's more appealing is because they are doing that. They're hyping up the lifters. They're hyping up the event. And then they're following through with it. Yeah. The competitions that are unregulated have way more energy. And while sometimes, like, for example, the Pro Raw, I think it's called, in Australia, I went to. in 2018, I think 2019, and like it was really hype. It was really fun. I didn't even know these lifters, but they're all bringing their heat. They got the music going. It was obnoxious. I didn't like it, but they still made it about the lifters, so the lifters were really excited. There's no rule book, so like, you know, judging was kind of suspect, and at that point it is a problem because if it's a money meet and it's not consistent judging, or there's obvious favorite and there's, you know, influence of the three judges, it's shady. It's like, okay, you got reds, but you got, you know, and you got whites, and it's like they look the same. Like you have to, I think you got to also increase the legitimacy of like the judging. That would probably help, because it's hard, you know, if there's some way to really just see like an instant replay would be really cool. I know they have that at the jury table, I think, and that's useful. Just getting a side view of every squat, for example, and being able to review it, because it would be easier to determine, hey, that was a bad call. It's hard to see sometimes. Now, if you got the lights, you got like the high contrast lighting at these high level competitions, and you have the judges that are sweating and they're tired and they probably missed the squat because they're, you know, like give them an instant replay. Like,
and they're not even in the right position a lot of the time to like accurately see. Like for a squat example, like to facilitate having a load of spotters and even the live stream just to see the lifter from a side on angle, you're often putting the judge in a position where he's not going to be able to accurately see this lifter's technique. He's often like off in the corner sitting down, and there's a rule, I'm pretty sure, that the judge can't even leave his seat in the IPF. That's so dumb. That's really dumb, because you're putting so much confidence in the fact that this judge is in the right place and that he's going to absolutely be able to make a right call when he's 15 feet away and he's trying to look between two spotters.
It reminds me of like the Soviet Union and how they treated their like science. They were so afraid to be wrong that they like had like faulty data in the nuclear reactor in Chernobyl, you know, like they're so confident that their system was, you know, locked in, that they didn't even double check what was going on. And when they did the testing, it's a long story, but long story short is like, have some backup. Why are you relying on this? We don't care if, you know, how good of a judge can you be? You know, like you're limited by the same things that everyone else is, unless you have like binoculars and you're looking, how do you look at a long ass femur? You know, if you got this massive femur, you're looking at the top of the knee simultaneously as the top of the hip crease. Like, you're not that good. No one's that good. Okay. It's okay. No one gives a shit if you are somehow eagle eyes and like super focused on these two planes at the same time. It doesn't matter. Just get a fucking video, slow it down and watch it. Nobody cares. Just make sure it's right.
And they're still very against doing that, because I remember at Euros in Lithuania in 2019, there was a couple of Irish lifters who had a couple of bad calls, and their coaches had to go over to the table, and they were so closed off. They did not want to do it. They were one step away from telling us to F all. They're just so against it. They don't want to even use the facility to replay it. They just care more about being right the first time around than they do.
They care more about themselves than they care about the lifter. That's the thing. That's the whole problem. It's a top-down experience, and that's why it's so difficult to just implement simple things, because then what's the utility of a judge? It's like, bro, there isn't much. Okay.
You'd probably be better off. You'd probably make more accurate calls if all you used was the video replay thing, and the judges were looking at the lift through the video rather than just with
the importance of a judge is to know the rules, right? And to be able to enforce them. And they do instant replays all the time. The reason why in sports like basketball and football and soccer, whatever, football is because if they had to review every play by replay, it would be too slow. You know, if they had every call double checked, but you get offsides that get like, you know, you always check the offsides calls. Sometimes they're off, sometimes they're on. Very likely they're on, you know, because they're really good referees. But if they had to slow down play where they had to review it every time it would slow down. But the thing is, you get a minute in between all the lifts anyway. And the people are actively stopping the momentum by changing the weight. So there's no reason that is justifiable to say or to ignore the use of replays. You can just do it between the fucking attempts.
You have so much time to do it.
There's so much time. And if you can't, then you're a bad judge. Speed it up. You can speed it up, dude. You could go twice speed, pause, scroll. Okay, yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Go for it. Like we have so much technology, and you could do that with the freaking iPhone.
Yeah.
It's so simple, man. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was gonna get heated up by this conversation.
Go for it, man. Say whatever
but
you
it's
want.
like it's not that big of a deal to do replay. Use the technology. If you want the sport to grow, use technology to make it easier for people to make the right calls and for people to enjoy the experience. And focus on the lifter, focus on legitimacy, focus on the lifter, use your technology to your advantage.
Yeah.
Stop limiting yourself by using archaic ways of regulation. It's not, maybe that will limit total competitions because you got to train them up to use and set up the cameras and everything. Yeah, okay. Make that another barrier of entry. Like it's not.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I mean,
you got to
they
spend
go
an extra bit
through
of money.
judging courses anyway. Why not make that a part of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they could do it. I mean, it's not like it would happen overnight, but if you can revamp the course to teach them how to use cameras, to teach them how to use the things that their media team usually has the knowledge of, just hire a media director to teach the meet director how to integrate cameras. You can connect it through HDMI. HDMI with a capture card. You can plug that directly into a computer. It would take some setup. Like it's not like that part is simple to do instant replay. Instant replay take a good, software, and sometimes it's buggy. So maybe you wouldn't rely on it for every single lift, but like use them when you need to because it wasn't obvious.
Yeah.
It's
IPF
challenge.
World. They have the money to do it.
Yeah.
They have plenty of money to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you like some of the venues, they get all of the equipment they have in the warm-up room, just setting everything up. They have the money to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely do.
The other thing is fire people quicker. Some people that are at the top shouldn't be there, but it's such a small thing that people don't like, if you can fire people quicker that have been doing shady things, like judges that are maybe not doing the right stuff with the people involved. It's hard to say this without saying it.
Yeah.
But like sexual harassment is a thing in the IPF, for example, from people at the top,
Yes.
and that is something that they should quickly fire for, because I've witnessed firsthand some pretty suspect sexual harassment from, men to women to youth lifters, where it's like, did he really just say that?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
Yeah. I witnessed it at Euro in 2019 to a man to a sub-junior girl saying some pretty questionable thing. The thing is, though, when it comes from the top down, they're all buddies. They all got each other to that position. They're not going to fire. Well, they don't want to. They don't want to take accountability for their actions because they genuinely think they're better than everybody else for being in that position. It'd be very hard to knock them off the top because they're doing everything in their power and they have the whole thing set up to make sure that they stay there.
Yeah.
It'd take a lot to get them taken from that position.
Yeah, it would take probably restructure of the organization. I mean, from the top down, man, it gets pretty dirty. You go to enough international competitions to see how these people act, and it's like, you have any authority here? Like, I can't believe you have any authority or power. Like, you are completely unprofessional. This is the only way you have a job because you built the job for yourself. Like, that's the only reason. And
literally,
it's like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, literally. What else do you think is wrong with powerlifting?
That's probably the biggest thing is that the top down approach to it is just dated. And the majority of the people at the top shouldn't be there. They need to keep up with the time and they need to prioritize the experience. They got to stop focusing on the Olympics because, one, nobody cares about the Olympics anyway. I don't know the last time I gave a shit about the Olympics. Like, it's cool as an event, but Olympians don't even make any money. That's the thing. The Olympics are for the countries. It's for the governments. It's not for the people. Olympians are not like the happiest people ever, dude. They get paid fuck all. They don't have any long-term sustainability despite spending their entire life to get there. Yeah. If you want it to be lifter focused, then prioritize making money for the lifters. Yeah. Prioritize creating businesses around it.
Yeah.
That's why these money meets are cool, because they're incentivizing businesses to promote themselves to then fund the competition. That's like literally why they can give $20,000 to a lifter, because it's not all about the federation raising that. It's like, hey, business owner, do you want to make a 20K investment and a tax write-off to support the competition so we can give it to the lifter? That's a huge incentive. It reduces your taxes and all these things. So incentivize companies to participate in the competition, ignore the Olympic, make it legitimate, increase legitimacy through other ways. The Olympics, who cares, dude? No one.
I don't. I've never watched the Olympic.
No lifter in 2021 cares about the Olympic, you know? Like, get it on TV. There are plenty of things and plenty of sports that are on TV that are not Olympic focused.
Strongman's on TV.
Strongman's on TV, man. Like, make it fun. If the events were actually cool to watch, it would be entertaining. Get good commentators. Like, make it a show.
Yeah.
Don't like, God, no one cares.
No.
Survey the population of lifters and ask them, would you rather be in the Olympics or would you rather have the opportunity to make $200,000 if you win this competition?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Every
and I think
single lifter says $200,000. I bet.
Absolutely. Ask an Olympian whether they'd like an Olympic gold medal or 200K for winning one competition. They'd take the 200K.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and his point was that prize money was stupid and that they shouldn't. Like, people will forget about it over the years if the meet is basically take the 30K and put it back into the meet because it needs to be more lifter folk. I got what he was saying, but if there is if there's no incentive for people to do it, they're not going to. People go to IPF Worlds because they want to be the IPF World Champion. There's a lot of clout that goes with that. People do the current US Open not only because they'll be seen as the best in the world, but because they're getting a fat paycheck as well. I think I don't think making it a completely amateur sport is the way to go. I think you have to provide a way for people to make money through powerlifting to make it sustainable and to actually help it grow. Because if you look at any other like single man sport that people get paid in on a regional level, there is still prize money for it. You, like a bloody golf competition, you can win a few $100 for going down to your local golf course and playing around with 20 other, old men. You can't just continue to make it completely amateur. And I think the prize money will always have to.
Or look at any successful team-based sport.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're successful? It's definitely not the Olympics.
Yeah.
The NBA isn't functioning in the middle of a pandemic because it's an Olympic sport. It's functioning because people are spending, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry for basketball, and they've incentivized that. They've incentivized the players. They've incentivized other businesses. If you participate in the IPF as a business, you're like hardly incentivized because they're funneling all the money back into the IPF, and then they're using that money for I don't know what.
Yeah.
And
literally.
It's like, you want to incentivize businesses to be in business. So do that.
And if you look at the NBA or the NFL, like if you just took the actual game, you took away the crowd, you took away the commentators, you took away the show that they put on, and you just put it on silent and watched the game, it would be so boring and nobody would watch. But that's what they do with powerlifting.
When you get
they bring in shit commentators who don't know what they're talking about. They have no music. The judges just they make bad calls and they don't want to be held accountable for it.
Imagine Michael Jordan just poster somebody, and no one said anything about it. It's like, oh, and Michael Jordan just dunked on player number 42. It's like that's a different story than, oh my God, Michael Jordan with the tomahawk slam.
Yeah.
That's what makes it hype, because you get that emotional attachment to the lifter or to the player in that case. And like, man, it's not that hard. Sports have existed for a while, and successful ones exist right now. Follow the thing that the successful sports are doing that have lasted through the pandemic, and you will see the trend of what is useful and what isn't.
Yeah, I've always said, if you want to know how to be successful at any one thing, you cannot just look at what the best people in that realm are doing. You have to look outside of it. If you want to know how to be the best powerlifter, you can't just look at powerlifting because there's so much information that you're leaving off the table there. You have to look at basketball players, footballers, everybody, because it's not about how to be the best powerlifter, it's how to be the best high performer. But if all you ever did was look at what the best powerlifting meets are, you're going to have a really bad powerlifting meet.
Because they're not very big.
They're not very big and they're not very good yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think someone like King of the Lifts, is doing something in a realm where it's incentivizing people to lift, because they get an opportunity to get their lifts on King of the Lifts,
They get shared.
they get shared, and there's a whole podcast around hyping up these lifters. Like, I don't think it's a good podcast, to be honest, because the audio quality is crap.
Yeah.
But at least you get to hear from people who care. And the IPF doesn't do anything like that. If you're the federation and you only make posts about Gaston, and all your posts are like, Gaston made this rule change, like, wow, no one cares, dude. Promote your lifters. Again, just make it fun for us. Well, I'm not even a lifter, I'm just a coach. Make it fun for my lifters to compete. Otherwise, I'm going to take it into my hands, and I'm going to make my own meets online. And by the way, I'll be doing that because people want, to be involved in something. They want to be a part of something, and it's the job of the organizers to make it about the people involved, not making about how can we keep our money, and our checks so we can drive around, Rolls Royces in our hometown. It's like, you do nothing.
Yeah. No, they don't. Tell me about what you're going to be setting up.
Well, my plan is to make an online competition for lifters, because a lot of lifters around the world right now aren't able to compete anyway because of the lockdowns and the pandemic. And I know there's a lot of people like lifting that are just kind of like missing out on this vibe. So my plan is that in July, I think July 4th or July 8th, I haven't solidified the date, I want to have an online competition at minimum for my lifters, but at most for anyone that wants to show up and compete. I have to solidify like the rules, but my goal is to not make it so strict that like you have to get drug tested or something, but make it strict enough so like, hey, if you want to show up and sign up, there's going to be some prize money. There's going to be like a few businesses are already ready to kind of utilize their products to sell them for the winners. We're going to have some different weight class prizes, but it'll probably be like men's best men, best woman, and then like a few weight classes depending on how many people sign up. But yeah, the intention is to try to make it like lifter focused and potentially turn it into what looks like a competition. So it'll be like a post-production thing.
Okay.
Or it'll be a live stream of us kind of going over all the lifts and showing everyone what everyone's done. It'll be hard to make it as strict as like powerlifting competition, but we'll have some parameters to legitimize it. But yeah, that'll be happening in July because I've been wanting to compete, and a lot of my lifters are waiting for competitions to prepare for, and the federations aren't getting creative enough. So again, taking it into my own hands is what my plan is.
Good. Nice one, man. And how long have you been planning that for?
Just until like since March. So I've had some conversations with a few people who have been doing online competition. A lot more of the planning will happen in May because I'm still launching Zao Strength, and that's going to take another week or two until we launch our product for that. But once that's done with, or at least started, then I can reintroduce the energy into building this online comp and getting people aware of it. So look for May, maybe the first or second week in May, I'll announce it. Nice. It might be a different weekend since it'll be a shorter time to sign up. Yeah. But yeah, that's happening.
Nice one. And where does the name Zao come from?
Zao is a Greek word, and it means to live or to experience life. It's an ancient Greek word, so it's not something that people say very often.
Yeah.
But it means to live or experience life, and it was something I tattooed on my chest when I was 21 because I wanted to remind myself to like live and to do things outside of just like existing. To exist is not really to live. So Zao has been a big part of my, like, this is the reminder of like, hey, remember, like, don't just show up, but like kind of, like live, experience what's going on. And I created Zao Strength because it's like, I want it to be about experiencing life through strength. And strength isn't just how much weight is on the bar. It's also like how you approach your day. How you approach the gym, how you approach your food, how you approach the people in your life. And so it's a little more encompassing than just like powerlifting, but through strength training that we can train your mind, train your body, through mindfulness and through sustainable nutrition and strength. And that's just something that I've developed over time. And when I realized what I wanted to do was like, well, this makes sense. Like, if I'm going to leave RTS, I might as well create something I care about. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I thought Zao is meaningful enough to create a company around it, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, I think it's a good message to have. I have found myself getting like, I'm quite an obsessive person. When there's something that I really like and I really enjoy and I want to be good at, I tend to, like, my first instinct is to shut out everything else and just try focus on this. And I found myself doing that a lot over the years. And while I have found success at what I want to do through that method, it's also it can get quite depressing as well, not living the way a proper human should. It's not all about your success. I don't think it's not that you should be okay with not trying and just, being average at everything. But yeah, you need to find other things outside of lifting and just one thing, because you're only be living half a life if all you do is lift weights and then go home, eat and sleep.
Yeah, like there's so much more to life than lifting. And if anything, what's the connection that we make through the things that we do, I think is the important thing.
Absolutely.
That's why traveling was so useful for me, because I literally structured all of the places I went to based on whether or not they had a gym there. So that way I could train and experience the country and to go hiking and do all this stuff. And I could, train my body to be stronger and then also not limit myself by like, okay, time to go home and sleep. It's like, no, dude, go fucking go on a hike, go check out the culture, go to a bar, go learn something about art. Like if there's one thing I encourage powerlifters to do, it's to maintain an open mind to the world, because it can be really easy once you get obsessed with powerlifting to just eat, sleep, train, repeat,
Yeah.
And if you're 20, maybe that's fine. But it's like, one, you can get stronger not training every day. That's the thing. It's like, it's so much better for me that I don't have to train 6 days a week to improve my ability, because that means I have 4 days of the week to build a business. I can go hiking. I can go have fun with my family. I can actually have time for a girlfriend. Like, have time for significant people in my life. There's so much in my life in college where I was like, I don't have time to hang out. I got to lift. I got to eat. I got to go sleep. Like, I don't want to risk losing strength to hang out with you right now,
Yeah.
And that's not living either. It's like, dude,
who cares if you're strong if you have if you have nobody to share your successes with? It really doesn't matter how successful you are.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. I think that is really been how I've been approaching what I want to do with my life. And it's like, I want to make sure that people that support me, that I have time and I can give energy to the people who I love and who love me because they deserve it. And it's very selfish to ignore that in pursuit of something that doesn't really care about me. Like powerlifting doesn't care about me.
No.
I care about it, but where's the return? And for me, luckily, as a coach, there's a return because I get to help other people get stronger. But if it was just me as an athlete, again, going back to prioritizing the lifter in these competitions, it's like Luke Richardson left powerlifting for strongman because there's more opportunity in there. He could have been and has or was one of the best powerlifters to live. And he was 20.
Yeah, what did he total? 1,005?
1,010.5, I think was his best.
And how old was he? He was like 20 or something, right?
20 or 21, yeah.
It's insane.
So yeah, anyway, long story short is if you're going to be risking all, sacrificing so much, like I think you should have more to it. There should be more to it than just sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like there should be enjoyment as well at the, to come with it. And you don't need to fucking sacrifice everything for lifting. That's the thing. It's like, and I want to teach that. I want to show people how you can do that, because there's a huge culture around just sacrifice to win. And it's like, man, I train 3 days a week and I look good. I feel good. I'm getting stronger. I'm eating well. I don't obsess over anything, and I do pretty good for myself in that sense. So I think if I can teach more of that, I think people will enjoy it more and it'll be more sustainable. That's the thing. Like, can you sustain 6 days of training for 17 years? Because I plan on doing this till I'm 70.
Yeah.
If I was training 6 days a week and sacrificing like everything for it, no, I couldn't do it till I was
chances are as well, the whole sacrifice to win thing. It's like, well, chances are you're probably not going to win. If you're sacrificing everything else in your life to become you have this idea, you want to be a national world champion. Chances are you're not actually going to be that one person in the whole world who's going to do that. You're probably going to be better off if you enjoy the ride along the way, because
I'd rather accidentally become stronger.
Yeah. Try, don't force it, let it come to you. I think that's a good way to end the podcast as well. I think we have a solid 2 hours here.
You guys better like this, because
what's that?
I said these guys, everyone listening better like this, if they got to this point, I hope you liked it.
Genuinely. Like, if you have gotten to this point, thank you so much for listening to us talk shite. But that Jim is starting Zao Strength. Well, he's already started it, and you have a good idea of what you'll be doing with that there. I am also a coach. Kinetic Training Systems is my team. We compete in Ireland, but I also coach people abroad. So yeah, find me on Instagram and all my socials at David O'Connor KTS. You can find Jim_lift on Instagram.
Yeah, and then Zao Strength, ZAO Strength on Instagram as well.
Yeah, well, lovely. Thank you for taking your time out to talk to me, Jim. That was a really interesting talk.
Yeah, it was awesome. Hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely will if you want to come back on.
Yeah.